Aberdeen, the last bastion of civilization in the north. An old historic city with a distinct look and culture. The Granite City it is known as. It has beautiful architecture, a large golden beach, and a budding art scene. So why then is the city so demoralized and dirty? Why is the historic architecture being surrounded by corporate glass buildings, the main street being abandoned, and all calls for regeneration delayed or cancelled? And why is the art scene so underfunded? In this film, I intend to raise awareness of these issues and highlight some of their problems and solutions. So I mentioned earlier the beautiful architecture of Aberdeen, and Union Street is a place to see it. For all would-be tourists and big-wig investors, this will be their first destination, being the city's main street. And in the words of my colleague at work from Glasgow, Union Street looks minging, which is a shame. The graveyard, Castle Gate, and many other buildings look beautiful, but yet the street looks dirty. We have lots of rundown buildings or empty shops. The traffic is always congested, and as a result, Union Street is now the 6th most polluted street in Scotland. However, it is not all doom and gloom. Behold the City Centre Regeneration Master Plan. A massive £1 billion investment to try and make Aberdeen the true silver city in the north. Part of this project outlines plans for Union Street. More than £600,000 is being spent on cleaning buildings, pavements, and upgrading, removing, fixing, and repairing the street furniture. A further £2.4 million is being set aside to improve the fabric of the historic buildings. Aberdeen councillors have agreed a master plan for the city. It is hoped the regeneration, including the partial pedestrianisation of Union Street, could create 5,500 jobs and an extra £280 million in income a year. Dozens of projects have been put forward by architects BDP after a public consultation. Council leader Jenny Lang told Wednesday's meeting it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. A delegation of leading city figures started the meeting by offering support to the master plan, with Professor Ferdinand von Prozdinski of Robert Gord University saying it was time for action after a number of false starts. Aberdeen is also home to Union Terrace, a historic and acoustic garden in the centre of Aberdeen, right off of Union Street. Now, like Union Street, the gardens are run down and dirty, and in some parts of the park, it's the only refuge for rough sleepers at night. I went around Union Terrace and took some footage. As you can see, the park is disgusting. Now, there have been attempts to renovate the gardens prior to this new regeneration project, but what the previous plan wanted to do with this park is just hideous in my opinion. They were going to build over the terrace with all this crazy postmodern architecture, and the idea was universally hated by the Aberdeen public, and thankfully was never realised. I am looking forward to the revamp of the park, but whether it will be done well remains to be seen, especially considering what happened with Marshall Square and the old Provost Skene House. Marshall Square was to be the biggest and best thing to happen to Aberdeen. The massive construction took 5 years to complete and was the source of many controversies. For a start, when the land was up for grabs, many residents of Aberdeen wanted a park or something to blend in with the surrounding architecture, especially Marshall College and the Provost House. But what Aberdeen got was a £107 million pile of glass and steel, more office space for the oil industry. The design was completely unsuitable for a site opposite Marshall College. Every time I see Marshall Square, it just disappoints me to think that how much the site could have been developed in a way that respected Provost Skene's house and Marshall College. The oil sector was the main basis for this construction. However, shortly after construction took place, the global oil prices plummeted. Thousands of jobs were lost and Aberdeen was hit hard. And to this day, after completion, the building sits empty, bar a few restaurant chains. I had also been in contact with a former employee of Aberdeen City Council. She told me something shocking. For every empty office in Marshall Square, Aberdeen Council will have to subsidise the rent for the building's owners. Or put simply, Aberdeen Council pays the rent. The council have spent a tremendous amount of money and time on this project, and it is very much disliked by a large chunk of the populace. It seems that in a city that is run down, dirty, and simply demoralised, a huge corporate building surrounding iconic architecture that bleeds money was the last thing the locals want. However, there are many local groups trying to rectify and rejuvenate Aberdeen Centre and make the city more accommodating and interesting and unique, something which the council has struggled to accomplish. But then there comes the issue of funding for these groups. As we can see here from this table, there has been a decrease in the financial contribution provided by Aberdeen City Council through its core funding programme of nearly £500,000 since 2008, despite Aberdeen City Council's website stating they care about local cultural programmes. Now if we take a look at this table here, we see a closer, more detailed breakdown of all the projects under Aberdeen City Council's core cultural funding programme. And we see some disappointing figures. The total cost of all requested projects was just over £1 million. The total amount of money requested by all 105 projects was £721,000. The total amount of money the council decided to put forward to the funding was £315,000. Total amount of money awarded was £296,728,000. What the council did with the remaining £18,272 from the £315 is a mystery to me. This all seems like a low number compared to the amount of money and concessions the council grants the oil industry. However, all is not lost. Though these local groups could be argued to be underfunded, there is also an international group in Aberdeen called New Art. New Art are an urban art group who hold events around many cities in Europe, with the goal of trying to rejuvenate city centres. They have done much work in and around Aberdeen, and I went and had a quick look to show you some of them. As you can see, their artwork is much needed in some places in Aberdeen. It is a nice touch to help bring colour to an otherwise grey city. I think Aberdeen is about to go through a huge transitional phase in the coming decades, and I hope that the new regeneration project will not only be handled correctly, but actually commence, unlike other attempts. The council promises to invest more in local culture and invest more in companies looking to renovate the city centre. However, with the evidence I've just shown, do we really trust the Aberdeen Council to run the project efficiently? Do we trust them to spend a £1 billion investment wisely after a questionable and tumultuous past few years?
In the meantime, so long Aberdeen, and here's looking at you.